program is the Active Center.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking one of the absolute most fascinating, massive, and let's be honest, somewhat complicated municipal balance sheets in the entire world. We're looking at the intricate relationship between the city of Anaheim, California, and its undisputed biggest resident, the Disneyland Resort. Now, whether you're a giant nerd for urban planning, corporate economics, or you're just curious about how cities actually function when they host global tourist destinations, this dynamic is literally a masterclass in local economics. We're going to keep it strictly to the numbers, the jobs, the local friction, and a brand new multi-decade blueprint that's aiming to reshape this whole relationship.
Okay, so here is exactly how we're going to break down this multi-billion-dollar municipal relationship today. We'll cover 1, the economic engine, 2, the Disneyland workforce, 3, the cost of magic, 4, blueprint for the future, and 5, the community commitment.
Section 1. The economic engine. The 5% footprint.
Right off the bat, to truly grasp the relationship between a megacorporation and its host city, you've got to understand the physical footprint. Now, the Anaheim Resort District, which is the specific zone where Disneyland is located, takes up just 5% of the city's total land area. It's a tiny sliver of Anaheim's actual physical geography. The other 95%, well, that's literally everything else. The residential neighborhoods, other businesses, the parks, the schools. Keep that tiny 5% figure in the back of your mind because it sets up a truly remarkable financial reality.
Because here is where things get wild. There is a staggering contrast going on here. That tiny 5% of land we just talked about, it generates over 60% of Anaheim's general fund revenue. Just pause and think about what that actually means. More than half of the entire city's budget for essential everyday services, police, fire, libraries, community programs, comes from a district that easily fits into a small corner of the map. This is all driven by massive local tax generation. We're talking property tax, sales tax, and the transient occupancy tax, which is basically the tax tourists pay on their hotel stays. In fact, pre-pandemic numbers showed the resort district churning out an estimated $194.8 million in tax revenue for the city budget. It is such an absolute cash cow that there are even ongoing local debates about potentially introducing a gate tax on tickets just to capture even more of it. And then, when we zoom out to the broader Southern California region for fiscal year 2023, the total economic impact hits a staggering $16.1 billion. Yep, that is billion with a B. This is according to a recent study by the CSU Fullerton Woods Center for Economic Analysis and Forecasting. That $16.1 billion represents the direct, indirect, and induced impacts driven largely by the fact that over 25 million people visit the Anaheim Resort District every single year. It's just a phenomenal amount of outside money being pumped directly into the local economy.
So what's the so what here? How does all of this translate to everyday life for someone actually living in Anaheim? I mean, why should a local resident care about hotel taxes? Well, because those massive city revenues directly offset costs for the locals. Because the tourists and the resort are shouldering so much of the city's financial burden, Anaheim residents actually pay 10 to 20% less for their water and 5 to 20% less for their electricity compared to other parts of Orange County. Plus, on top of that, residents pay zero utility tax on water or power. That's a real, tangible, everyday financial benefit that is directly tied to the resort being there.
Section 2. The Disneyland workforce. The job multiplier.
You simply don't generate $16 billion without a massive workforce behind you. And this really perfectly illustrates the job multiplier effect. The Disneyland Resort is consistently reported as Orange County's largest employer. They directly employ about 36,000 people. But when you start factoring in the resort's operations, the massive supply chain, and all that visitor spending at the local restaurants, hotels, and shops outside the park, the resort actually supports over 102,000 jobs regionally. This basically means that for every single person wearing a name tag inside the park, there are roughly 2 more jobs out in the community that exist just because the park is there.
And beyond just those massive job numbers, it's really interesting to see how a corporation of this scale manages a local workforce. To recruit and retain Orange County's biggest employee base, they offer some very specific perks. Take the Disney Aspire program, for example. It covers 100% of upfront tuition costs for eligible employees, usually capped right around $5,250 a year for tax reasons, plus reimbursements for books. They also have the Partners Federal Credit Union. This was originally established just for employees, and it provides on-site branches and dedicated financial wellness support right there at the resort. It's kind of like its own localized microeconomy, really focused on career mobility and retention.
Section 3. The cost of magic. Friction in the city.
Now, let's be real. It's not all fairy dust and dollar signs. Hosting a massive global destination creates very real friction locally, and we have to impartially look at that to understand the whole picture. The disadvantages for the host city are completely undeniable. I mean, when you funnel 25 million visitors into one city, you are going to get serious traffic and congestion on the local roads. Furthermore, having a single employer with 36,000 workers creates massive, intense demand for housing, which directly contributes to rising housing costs and affordability crunches in the area. Then there's the environmental impact on the nearby neighborhoods, most notoriously the noise from nightly fireworks, especially during the peak summer and holiday seasons. And finally, there's the company town perception. Critics have historically raised concerns about the political influence that the resort and surrounding tourism interests hold over city decision-making, sparking debates over whether tourism priorities sometimes overshadow general non-tourism city services. These are incredibly complex, very real realities of sharing a zip code with a mega-resort.
Section 4. Blueprint for the future. Enter Disneyland Forward.
So, how are the city and the corporation actually trying to balance this ledger going forward? Well, in 2024, the city of Anaheim approved a plan called Disneyland Forward. Now, here's what you absolutely need to understand about this. It is a multi-decade conceptual development and rezoning plan. It basically gives Disney the flexibility to integrate new theme park attractions, hotels, and dining into areas that are currently just surface parking lots. But here is the major takeaway. It involves absolutely zero physical expansion or acquisition of new land. None. They are just modernizing their existing 500-acre footprint, optimizing that tiny 5% of the city we talked about earlier to squeeze even more value out of the exact same geographic space.
And the foundational backbone of this new blueprint is a massive financial pledge. Disney has committed to a minimum $1.9 billion investment into new theme park and lodging experiences within just the first 10 years of this agreement. With that giant capital injection, the plan is projected to create nearly 9,000 construction jobs and over 4,500 new permanent operational jobs. It is literally a massive doubling down on their existing economic engine.
Section 5. The community commitment. Offsetting the costs.
But wait, what about all those local challenges we just talked about? The traffic, the housing affordability, the friction. How does a $1.9 billion theme park expansion actually help the residents who live outside that 5% footprint? Well, the Disneyland Forward Agreement attempts to mitigate those exact issues by locking in massive community payouts as part of the deal. First up, $85 million committed to traffic flow and infrastructure. Interestingly enough, $40 million of that is just for Disney to acquire and take over the maintenance of certain city streets that primarily serve the resort, which takes that financial burden completely off the city. The other $45 million goes to signal upgrades and safety measures. Next, there is a $30 million dedication to Anaheim's Public Housing Trust within 5 years. That is actually the largest corporate contribution to affordable housing for a non-residential project in the entire history of the city. And finally, $8 million to fund improvements for public parks located strictly outside the Anaheim Resort District. So it's a very targeted contractual effort to offset the specific strains the resort puts on local infrastructure.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I really want to leave you with this final, crucial question to chew on. Can a global theme park and a local community actually grow in perfect harmony? We've seen the staggering economic benefits, right? Billions in regional impact, lowered utility bills for the locals, and tens of thousands of jobs. But we've also seen the undeniable friction, the traffic, the housing crunches, and the intense municipal negotiations required just to pave the way forward. The relationship between Disneyland and Anaheim proves that when a mega corporation and a city share a footprint, the balance sheet is never just about profit. It's about constant, multi-decade negotiation to ensure that the magic inside the gates doesn't cost too much for the people living right outside of them. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredible dynamic and keep questioning how the economics of your own city are built.